You're a brand new online coach, or you're hoping to become an online coach and start making some side income. I'm gonna break down a psychological trick that I used to attract my first 3 high ticket clients. I was able to do this within my first 3 months as an online coach with virtually no experience coaching in the niche that I was in. For context, about a year ago, I started coaching online in relationships and breakups. I had no experience coaching in this. I did have some life experience, obviously, with relationships and breakups, but probably not more experience than you have yourself, right? This is something that most people have some level of experience with. And I was able to pick this niche, study it, and start making content on relationships and breakups. But like I said, I was able to get 3 high ticket clients within the first couple of months. And I'm going to share with you how I did this, because there is a really powerful psychological strategy that I used to do this. Now, before I jump into that, I should mention the basics, right? So you want to ideally have a few testimonials to build credibility. And the way to get testimonials is to actually perform the service for free, especially when you're just getting started, even if it's just with a friend. Not only to gain credibility with the testimonials, but you also want to get good at coaching in what you're going to coach in. In addition to that, what I would add is that you also want to be posting on a daily basis. I recommend starting with TikTok. That's how I started. I started posting 2 to 3 times per day on TikTok, and I wasn't too concerned about the quality of the content. For me, it was really just getting content out there so that people could see that I actually have a page. People could start to see that I know what I'm talking about. So once you've made some posts on social media and maybe you've gotten some testimonials, what you want to do to attract your first 3 high ticket clients is a simple storytelling technique. And you've probably heard of storytelling, but the way that most people go about it is really antiquated, and everybody seems to do it nowadays, so it doesn't come across as genuine. So for example, storytelling that people will try to do now, let's say they're an online fitness coach, they'll say something like, I used to be 100 pounds overweight, and this is how I felt about that. I didn't have any confidence, and I was able to do XYZ to lose the weight, and now I can help you do this too. So basically, they're telling a story about their own life experience and how they were able to overcome the challenge that they're now going to coach you in. And sure, this is not a bad way to go about it, and it could build a little bit of credibility, build some trust, be relatable, but the kind of storytelling that I did to attract my first 3 high ticket clients was I made it about the viewer themselves. So in my case, with relationships and breakups, an example would be you just recently went through a breakup and you engaged in a lot of begging after the breakup. You didn't leave them alone. You sent them a bunch of texts, and then your ex ended up becoming really harsh and cold, blocking your number, blocking you on social media, and then eventually you started sending emails, and then they ended up telling you that they still love you and they'll always love you, but they're not in love with you anymore and that you should move on. Here's what to do to reattract your ex in that situation. So instead of making the story about myself, I started to make the story about the person watching the video. I did this in a bunch of different kinds of scenarios. So another example would be your ex was an anxious, avoidant, attached person. And so you probably noticed that they were pulling away towards the end of the relationship. They started to respond to text less. They started to cancel plans. They started to say, I just need to focus on myself more. And because you didn't know what to do, you started to reach out to ask what's wrong. And the more you tried to resolve the issue, the more you tried to talk to them and figure out what the issue was, the more they pulled away until they finally ended the relationship. And now you're wondering if you have a chance. So you see the difference there between talking about myself and my own situation, my own life experience. As I mentioned, that can be relatable and it can be effective and maybe build trust. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that at all. But what helped me land my first 3 high ticket clients was actually making the story about the viewer. And this may seem like it's a little bit aggressive, but what I noticed is that when I made that switch from talking about myself to talking about people directly and almost assuming what their situation is, assuming what the problem is, and pointing the finger at them, I noticed that people started to comment on my posts and say, that was word for word what I just went through. Or, oh my God, this is so accurate. This is what I'm going through right now. And so my approach was essentially to, on a daily basis, talk directly to the person watching my piece of content, my TikTok, for example, and almost point the finger at them and get into the psychological things that they might have been going through. So if you're looking to start getting some high ticket clients, you want to be as direct and relevant to them as possible. Because again, your life story might be inspirational, but it may not be something that the viewer can directly relate with. They might be inspired. Wow, that's really impressive that you were able to make that change in your life. But what does this have to do with me and what I'm facing in my life? So the pivot that I want you to make as an online coach is I want you to focus on directly addressing the potential client's issue, talking to them like you're talking to a friend, being relatable about it, but pointing the finger at them almost like a big brother would do. And the more ways you can articulate different kinds of scenarios and address the audience member specifically, the more you're going to be able to actually hit them at home where it hurts, right? Because they're going to be hurting if they're going to pay for your service. And if they're going to be a high ticket client, they're going to want to feel like you understand their specific scenario. So to recap, obviously you want to have some testimonials. So you should do your service for free for at least 10 people, get some reviews, get some testimonials under your belt. And you want to obviously post on a regular basis. But as mentioned, I was able to get 3 high ticket clients when I made this shift from talking about myself or talking generally about a subject to actually addressing the viewer directly and almost being harsh about it, being direct about it, and covering as many different kinds of scenarios as possible so that I make sure that I'm hitting audience members who are facing every kind of different challenge within the niche, which in my case was relationships and breakups. Now, if you need help picking a niche for your online coaching business and you want help scaling up an online coaching business from 0 to 10 grand a month or more, then definitely leave a comment below or go to the description of the video and you can set up a free call with me to help you get started with your online coaching business.